Welcome to People First by All Voices. I'm your host, Jeffrey Fermin, and today I am delighted to be joined by Bonnie of Zapier. Fun fact, before I let you properly introduce yourself, I always mess up the enunciation. I always say like Zapier, Zapier. Is that like a
But
common
you
thing
got
that
it
happens?
right. Yeah, we get Zapier. I said Zapier in my interview, but they corrected me quickly. Zapier is one surprisingly. That's kind of like French twist. But yeah, but Zapier is right. So nailed it.
I don't know. Glad I just figured they're called Zaps. I mean, I'm a marketer by trades. I'm like, oh, I use the marketing Zaps, and it's
Yep.
probably enunciated. So Bonnie, she is the recruiting lead over there. Bonnie, tell us a little bit more about what you do specifically, and we could even give yourself a little bit of love on here, a little pat in the back, and discuss what you do online and all of your success in the social field.
Sure. So at Zapier, I manage our go-to-market and operations recruiting teams. So we recruit for basically all the, I would say less technical. I don't want to say not technical because a lot of our roles, even within sales, are highly, highly technical roles. But my team recruits for all of those. So I oversee our recruiting and sourcing, brand, employer brand, all that good stuff for those departments. And then, yeah, I also just play around a lot online. So got lots of social media going on, got a newsletter. I guess I like to put my opinions out into the world.
And I think it's great. I love it when you do some of these memes. You almost like go into the Gen Z world of like cool creative memes and using these like sounds and stuff like that to describe how the state of recruiting's at. And I dig it. I like it. So perfect segue, like, how are things going right now in the recruitment space as a whole? I'm assuming you all are doing fantastic work. You're obvious, if I remember correctly, a fully remote company,
Yes, we are.
amazing CPO with Brandon. You just
Yeah.
had hired, I just saw like the HR automation position with Emily. She's doing a lot of great things
Yeah.
out there. But yeah, I'm sure you all are fine. But if we take a step back and see how the whole landscape's kind of going right now, what are you seeing?
Yeah. Oh man. Depends on who you ask. I would say, I mean, definitely feels like an employer's market, especially in tech. I think I don't know if anyone can avoid it at this point with all of the job market data coming out of the BLS. And so I think as a whole, the job market is definitely tough for anyone that is looking for opportunities. But I think that actually does create a lot of difficulty on the recruiting side as well, because what we're dealing with is huge, huge volumes of applications. There's also, I think, AI, for every I guess it's one step forward, you take at least one step back. I know the saying is two steps back, but with AI, the upside is it helps people do things more quickly, and the downside is we're just inundated with um, AI generated apps, sometimes completely fake apps, things like that, which mean that recruiting teams have to be a lot more vigilant about who's in their funnel and whether they're legitimate and what their intentions are and things like that. I think a lot of our processes are not created across recruiting as a whole to handle the level of like volume that recruiting teams are seeing right now, which makes for some bad candidate experience, makes for overworked recruiters, where it just takes a lot more effort to make a single hire than you might have seen a few years ago. And that probably feels counterintuitive to people because you might be thinking employers market, like, shouldn't it be a lot easier to make great hires? But I think actually, like, what we're seeing is just, a lot of noise, that makes it a lot harder to get to the people you wanna get to.
Just read that article. I realistically, be completely honest, I only read the headline of the Atlantic article that went out this week that was just like, "Hey, the job market is hell." That's literally the title of the article, and just briefly
I was
states,
triggered by some things they said in that, if I'm being honest, but yeah.
yeah, they were discussing some of these issues going on where right now there's so much AI slop. That's kind of the new buzzword, right? Going on, and recruitment is being really affected by it. I've seen like job postings like kind of get filled up with hundreds of applications minutes right after they get
Yeah.
posted. Uh, what are recruiters and just like HR generalists doing to make sure that it's not affecting their everyday operations and AI as well as just all these kind of ongoing issues? What are
Yeah.
HR recruiters doing to like kind of counteract and make sure they like react appropriately to this?
Yeah. I think it's different things, like different teams are leaning into different things. Some folks are leaning more heavily on technology. It's interesting because there is this, I have to call it a misconception because I just haven't seen the technology that people claim exists where AI is like scanning and filtering resumes so that recruiters don't even have to look at them. I haven't seen this. So in every tool I've used, including the ones I currently use, even though we have literally like best in class technology at Zapier, um, our recruiter is still having to look at every single application before, and make a decision on it. And so, it's a lot. And I would say some recruiting teams are trying to leverage technology where they can to try to find like the potential. I think some are, uh, honestly like completely kind of disregarding candidate experience. So, you go through enough, find a handful you like, ignore the rest. Those sorts of things are I think happening, which I think that are leaving job seekers feeling incredibly like just unvalued and unseen, and is just creating a lot of animosity. Um, I think, we're definitely spending more time trying to pressure check. Like, I think one tricky thing is a fraudulent application can look identical to a really legitimate one because so many job seekers are leveraging AI to try to speed up the process. So, at Zapier, like, we don't do cover letters, but we do have a couple of application questions that are kind of open-ended. And something like 70% of people are just lever using ChatGPT. It's very obvious. They'll all sound the same. They'll like have the same sentence starter. It's just like very obvious. So it's hard to know, is this AI because there is, a fake candidate behind this or someone's inventing their experience? Or is this AI because someone's just trying to go quickly because it's a tough market? And so we end up having to do a lot more. Let me check LinkedIn. Let me, look up this person's email online and see if it was just connected, or when was that LinkedIn profile made? If it was made this month, good chance that's a fake candidate, like those sorts of things. So recruiters are spending a lot more time trying to check those things before we can confidently kind of move someone into our process, because really risky if you end up with fraudulent people in the mix. And so, um, yeah, I think it's just creating a lot more work all around.
Yeah. It's one of those situations where like AI is meant to, help out and automate a lot of things, but in this case, it's clearly creating more work and adding more steps to the process. So,
Yeah,
I'm
for
curious to
everyone.
see. Yeah. So curious to see where things go moving forward. And I guess a good question is, where do you think things will kind of look like in the future? I mean, you've been in the recruitment field for quite some time now. You've seen how things have evolved and maybe got into this point where there's like a little bit of uncertainty or hoopla, right? But yeah, where do you see things clearing up? Like, what types of problems are going to arise, and how do you foresee them getting fixed?
Yeah. I do think like we're gonna see people leaning more heavily on AI at top of funnel, to try to cut through. Like I think the technology people think exists that doesn't exist right now, at least not at scale. I think will become like more common. It's like being built, that can try to go through an app funnel and find the strongest people, maybe even do some of the screening, like chatbots that can do some, checking, verifying some of the basics. I think right now a lot of those things will be a turn off to top talent, who's like, you need to be courting me, like that, that people that feel that way. But I think over time it'll probably get normalized and we'll just see a lot of that happening early on, so that recruiters are spending their time more on the people who have been qualified and then having those more kind of personal conversations to figure out the right fit in the business and like those sorts of things. So that is my guess. And maybe we will get to a place where there's more of like a matchmaking process. Uh, that's, using AI to do those things. Again, I think we're a far cry from that now, but I could see, a world in which like you want to work at a company, you don't even have to apply to a specific role. You just say like, hey, I want to work here. Like, here's a little bit about me. And then AI is able to sort of scan like the world, figure out what's all the stuff this person's done. Where could they fit? Check, is this like a real or a fake person? Like those sorts of things. And then could like present to a recruiting team, here's like the 20 best people in the mix. Um, I could see us like getting to that place in the next like five years or so, I'd imagine. But yeah, right now I think there's like a real trade-off because a lot of the things we could be doing, I think could also like drive away really great talent because I think people are feeling so dehumanized by like recruiting processes right now that worry that the more technology we introduce, the more we kind of are pushing people away.
Just a random question that I thought of right now. First of
Yeah.
all, great points. I would love to see that point where you just like, oh, I want to work for this company. And then all of a sudden you just have like an interview that's like
Yeah,
your second to last one right then and there. Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
I saw a little debate online. I forgot who posted it. But the poster was essentially saying like, how many interviews is just way too much? Like what should be the cutoff? Do you have, I'm curious to know, obviously, your process and your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Um, I think like I have a I have a different opinion here from a lot of people because I'm okay with really rigorous hiring processes. The very first job I ever had straight out of college was, like a full day interview with an in-person, a group, I had to prepare something, like I had to read things in advance, like, 6-hour interview. That was fine by me. Pretty much any interview I've had has been like pretty rigorous, has involved take-home assessments. I'm just fine with that. And so yeah, but I think it should be proportionate to the job. Maybe a rough rule of thumb is like, for a job under 100K, like 3 interviews, and you add on an interview for every additional 50K you're willing to pay the person, like something like that, maybe. I think some companies are just like tacking on more things, or this like indecision leads them to feel like maybe one more interview will get me this information I need. Um, and I think there's a lot of psychological studies that show that the more options you have, the harder it is to make a decision. And I think a lot of like companies and hiring managers are suffering from that because they have a lot of great people. And then it makes them think that like, some interview will miraculously like make it clear who the right person is when in fact they've just got a lot of people who could do the job really well. Um, and just kind of like need to make a decision and realize they're going to disappoint someone. But instead, I think they just feel like, okay, we can maybe if we just come up with the right test or the right like interview question, then we'll figure out the right answer. And I think some are in that place and kind of feel like they can do that because it is an employer's market.
This might not even exist. I'm just putting my entrepreneur hat on right now, but
Yeah.
just mention like once you start adding on these interviews, it kind of creates this indecision and like and maybe even a little confusion. Is there maybe a metric that kind of defines like, oh my God, in having more interviews with X amount of candidates, we're like losing X amount of productivity dollars? Like, do you all kind of measure
Yeah.
that as recruiters?
It's funny we don't, but I talk about that a lot because there's, certain processes where we're losing a lot of people due to the rigor of the process. And, you know, I'm like, think of how many people we have entered and how many hours have gone into interviewing those people and meeting with them and finding them and getting them to the table. And only to like lose them at the finish line because they don't want to do the most rigorous part of our hiring process, let's say, where there's like, an assessment and a live, presentation and things like that. Uh, and it does, like, it's like, yeah, we've maybe put in 10 hours of our time and there is like a value. I've seen people that have kind of tried to like monetize it and maybe say, on average, everyone's time is worth $100 an hour. Then we've now spent like $1,000 to get this person to the finish line only to lose them. Was that like worth it? And that doesn't even include the lost productivity to your point. Just like the cost of salary. So, yeah, I think those are like good questions for teams to be asking themselves. And also, would we have been better off? Like, one question I've asked is like, are we better off hiring someone that we're 90% confident in? There's some, risk of them not panning out, but you're going to get some productivity out of them for like 6 months versus waiting 6 months to make that hire and getting no productivity. Are you like better off a year down the road? And some would say yes, because a low performer takes so much time and it takes a lot to be able to then exit them. But I wonder if like companies, instead of investing so heavily in trying to like vet for all these things in hiring, would they be better off if they had ways, incentives, like, if it doesn't work out 2 months in, we're going to part ways. We'll guarantee you 3 months severance, that's the deal. And then like hire more quickly. Um, yeah, I just wonder if like more companies should be thinking of things like that.
I feel like maybe since I've been in the startup realm, everything needs to be like quantified. We need to kind of have like, we need to show the return on investment
Yeah.
for everything. So I feel like it does kind of make sense. But once again, I'm just a theorist slash demand gen person. So I really don't know. And it's up to the practitioners to really bring up their use cases and say it. I do have one last question, and now I'm thinking on the job seeker side. Given the competition that's out there and all the current situation, what would you recommend job seekers be doing to maybe stand out in this very hyper competitive market?
Yeah. One thing I will say is, like, as rough as it is, it's still, you know, historically, unemployment is still fairly low. Now, a lot of people are underemployed. I get that. A lot of people are in jobs they don't really want to be in anymore. They feel stagnant, those sorts of things. But people are still getting jobs every single day, literally daily. We have candidates who drop out because they're accepting another offer that we, just got to like the finish line a little too late, or they have competing offers. So there are still people out there who are thriving, even in a difficult job market. That will continue to be true. I think one of the things is you have to just apply for something that you're highly qualified for. And I think people are really, really bad at figuring out what they're actually qualified to do. Part of that might be how job descriptions are written. Part of it is, I think, applicants, like job seekers, think through the lens of I could do that, whereas companies on the hiring side are thinking through like they have done that. And so, I think a lot of job seekers are actually more of a stretch candidate than they realize they are. And so I think you have to be really objective and like only apply for things where you're really going to be in like the top 10% of candidates and be like really discerning around that. I think that would help people a ton. Um, I would recommend getting rid of any notions of like remote work. A lot of companies are going back to office. The remote jobs are just wildly, wildly competitive because they have such a broader like geography they can hire from. So drop those sorts of things. And just be like a little bit more open on industry, recognize you may be making a lateral move, you may be taking a small step back, versus progressing in your career right now. Um, and yeah, I think like some of those things, kind of loosening the expectations. Unfortunately, I don't like saying that. I just think it's true. Would help people. And then I think like I wouldn't personally, if I were applying for jobs right now, I would just make sure every application was like top tier. I mean, and I would not be using AI to write anything because I know I'm a better writer than AI. And I want to show like what I can bring to the table. Like, I'm going to make sure that they know that there's like a real person that really wants that opportunity that can make the case for why I'm the best for it. Once I submit that application, I'd be finding every person in my network to be like, you got to talk to Bonnie. She's the best. Like, any connections, I would be doing that and submitting a low volume of applications, but using like everything I had to be like advertise me and make me like stand out above the crowds. Those are the things I'd be doing if I were a job seeker.
Makes perfect sense. Bonnie, awesome interview. I really appreciate. Oh wait, I have one more small
Sure.
question. It's going to take 30 seconds. How excited are you about uh, meeting LeVar Burton? Did I read that right?
Yeah. I mean,
Was
I'm
that
not
for
actually
real?
gonna meet him, but he's speaking at our Zap Connect, which everyone should join. It's on September 25th and 25th. Is that right? September 25th. Maybe when you share this, we'll get the right date. It's totally free. It's like a Zapier kind of customer event, but we're going to talk a lot about like using AI in different workflows, AI in HR workflows, things like that. But LeVar Burton is one of the keynote speakers.
All right. I
It's a
loved
virtual
reading
event,
Rainbow as a
so I
kid,
won't actually be reading me. Yes, LeVar Burton of Reading Rainbow.
or Star Trek if you're kind of a
Or
nerd
or
like
Star
me.
Trek. Yeah.
But no, awesome work. Yeah, I'll get the link. I'll put it on the YouTube description as well as
Cool.
like when I share it on LinkedIn. I'll be sure to give y'all some love. Uh,
Awesome.
Also, this is gonna be one of the 3 things that we're doing with Zapier this month. So
Cool. Well, I
I'm
know we
kind of
just signed up
excited.
and we're like using your platform now. So
That's
great.
wild. And
I'm not
when the
making that
logo
up, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no. When the logo came in, I was actively geeking out because I'm like an early adopter. So I was like,
Love
"Oh my
it.
god, this is an awesome freaking logo. I can't believe they just signed up." But
Great.
uh, I'm just nerding out. I really appreciate all that you've done
Yeah.
and how you all as an organization are like really pushing the culture forward and just like, yeah, you guys are
Well,
still
thanks
doing
so
great
much.
things.
Very cool.
All right, Bonnie. Well, I'll see you later, all right?
All right.
Thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much for joining us.
Thanks.